Podcasting from Astrolab Studios, this is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we revisit sci-fi, fantasy, and just plain weird shows that have faded from the collective consciousness and didn't quite make the impact that they intended. This week, Almost Human, episode 13.
I've seen this before. This is a copycat.
How would you know that?
10 years ago, a serial killer named Michael Costa was arrested.
It was his MO to stuff them with straw, just like this.
Press called him Straw Man.
Michael Costa. Currently serving a life sentence in the Cubes.
Gets more interesting.
Look at the investigating officer.
This was your father's case.
The caller of his career.
Right before he was killed.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that's bidding farewell to Almost Human this week. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Oh no, I forgot again. I forgot to think of something that's real. Just as you were saying that, I went, oh no, I forgot. I have to have...
Something real's coming.
I know, something real's coming. I need to have a Post-it note that just says, what's real? ? Oh, you know, it'd be better if I have one of those digital ones like John Kennick's and I just threw it up against the wall and tell me to do it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Digital what's real Post-it
Yeah, so
note.
that's the answer. As soon as we get digital Post-it notes, I'll be all over.
You'll know exactly what's real.
Exactly.
Well, Jordan, great news. I thought I'd get ahead of your eventual failure, and
Yeah.
Oh, that was rude. You don't fail. You're good.
That's okay. Everyone needs to fail sometimes. This show certainly has. Boom. Boom.
Take that, our own show.
Yeah, take that. The show we've decided to talk about in excessive detail.
All right. I'll go through this quickly, I guess. Just for funsies, what's real? So, in preparation for our final episode, I was kind of trying to do some last minute research for some stuff I'd been thinking about this show. Specifically, we talked a lot about this show in Tech War. I really wanted to see if I could find any sort of press or interviews or anything where someone might have said yeah, there was some influence by Tech War. And so I was kind of doing Google searches and trying to find some crossover or something, which I didn't find. But while I was doing that, I happened to come across the keywords I was searching brought me to this Den of Geeks. They'd done a listicle about TV androids. Mm-hmm. And obviously, it was an article about Westworld, and they're like, let's see what other TV androids have been around. And, the usuals are there, your Datas, your Dorians, those kind of things. And, of course, Tech War was also on the list.
Was the little girl robot from Small Wonder on that list?
She was not on that list.
Oh, remember she had a little cassette tape on her back?
I never saw that show.
Oh, it's really weird. We'll talk about it off air.
Okay. But like I said, yeah, obviously Tech War was on the list. Definitely got robots in it. Which robot do you think they featured? Which android from Tech War do you think they featured?
It would make sense to be that the Lieutenant Winger, is that his name?
Yeah, Lieutenant Winger.
That would make sense.
That would have been my guess too. But the one they chose to showcase blew my mind out the back of my head, Jordan.
I can't even think of another robot in the show.
Do you remember Jake Cardigan's girlfriend, Dr. Beth Kittredge?
I do, yeah.
She was a robot the whole time.
Whoa. When did that get discovered?
In the write-up, they're like, on Tech War, his girlfriend was killed, and then they replaced her with a robot with her memories, and then she just continued being a girlfriend. And I was like, wait, that didn't happen. And so I went to the Wikipedia page, backs it up.
Hold on.
The entire time we were watching that, she was an android.
Okay, a couple questions. The first one, did she know she was an android? Second, did Jake know she was an android, or did someone just replace her because they felt bad?
No, yes and yes, they both knew.
Huh, you think they would have mentioned that even a little bit?
I think this is probably a little bit our fault because Tech War was our first show and we didn't realize there were TV movies that happened before and we kind of fucked up on that part. But the fact that we watched 13. 14, 16 episodes of it.
And we never found out that one of the characters was an android. Look, maybe some of that's on us, but I think a larger extent, the problem has to be on the writers. Because if you have a character who has an android and they never do anything, robot-y, or there's never any mention, who cares if they're a robot then? It's like, hey, did you ever see The Sopranos? Oh yeah, by the way, all those characters were robots. Doesn't matter.
Didn't Jake hate robots?
Yeah, well, I think to be fair, he also treated his girlfriend pretty poorly.
Oh, fair enough. Anyway.
And any ladies he was dating, and the women themselves.
He just treated everyone badly.
Yeah, he was awful.
Anyway, I honestly was in shock for like 30 minutes when I found out this show we had spent so much time watching had a main character who was an android the entire time, but it never came up. Blew my mind.
I just thought of a new game we should play. We should go through all the series and see which characters may have been robots just based on how they were written, even though if they were never mentioned to be robots.
Secret robot?
Secret robot, there you go. Even though it's androids, I know. I always say robot when I mean android because I use it interchangeably. So no one email me and tell me the difference between androids and robots because I don't care.
Don't worry, no one's going to email. It's fine. All right, Jordan. I think you got a little game for us where we get kick this thing off.
Yeah, it's the old classic that I keep changing the name. So see if you can figure this out, Luke. Here's the game. It's called Share Bitcoin Accounts, Look at Lovingly, or Send Over the Wall.
Pretty good. I love when you change the name. I never know what it's going to be.
I didn't know. Do people share Bitcoin accounts? You're the Bitcoin expert.
Well, you would share a Bitcoin or send a Bitcoin.
Okay.
But it works. It all works.
It works? Okay, great. All right. So there's 5 rounds. I've named each of these rounds. Don't be too excited. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Round 1. This round's called White Men. I know. So the choices are John Kennicks, Richard Paul, or Rudy Long.
I think I am going to share a Bitcoin account with Rudy Long. I am going to look lovingly at John Kennicks. I'm going to send Detective Paul over the wall.
Oh, I couldn't disagree with you more.
Really?
Yeah. And this will be something we'll talk about more. Richard Paul has grown in my esteem over the course of the show, and especially to this last episode. So I am going to share Bitcoin accounts with Richard Paul, look at Rudy Long lovingly, and send John Kennicks over the wall because he's a bully.
Wow. I mean, you probably make a good case for it. Detective Paul certainly in the last few episodes has become a better rounded, more likable character.
In the scope of what this show is, I mean, he has total screen time probably on this show accounts for in 13 episodes maybe 5 minutes. I mean,
yeah,
he hasn't been around a lot.
No fault of his own.
No. Which brings us to round 2, robots or androids, and your choices are DRN model, MX model, XRN model.
Oh, I think it's gonna have to be share a Bitcoin account with an MX model, look lovingly at an XRN model. They're so spicy. And I guess I'm going to send the DRN model over the wall. I can't get over the fact that once they fall below 80% power, they become so irritable. I know that's not going to work for me.
You know what? Oh, we had very different picks, but you reminded me of that. And because of that, I'll agree with you. Not only does he after he drops under 80%, he gets all emotional. He's got a ton of problems. He's having weird memories we don't know about. He's always checking to see what your semen levels are at. He's got to go over the wall.
Fair enough. An MX model would be like living with like a Roomba. No problem.
Yeah, it's true. Easy roommate.
Probably do a lot of the cleaning. I don't mind that.
All right, round 3, villains. So you got Ethan. He was the clone guy. By the way, he never was given a last name, at least not according to IMDb. Ethan, he was the guy who was cloned himself. Eric Lantham, he's the guy who put on new faces.
Oh, yeah.
And Simon, who put neck bombs on people.
Oh, it's a tough one. I am going to share a Bitcoin with the beauty killer, the face guy. What's his name?
Eric Lantham.
Eric Lantham. I'm going to... I don't like the other 2 options. I would send them both over the wall, but who do I find less irritable? I guess I'm going to neck bomb Simon. I guess I'll look at him lovingly. He's a bit of a whiner, though, but I guess so. And then I'll send the other guy over the wall because, I don't know, he seemed like he'd be full of himself, and I don't need that.
I think I have to disagree. First, I think you have to look at Eric Lantham lovingly because his girlfriend sure isn't. For everyone who doesn't remember, she's blind. I think I would send Ethan over the wall because there's too many of him, and then I would share Bitcoin accounts with Simon.
Just
really?
Because. Why Simon? Just because
he's just left.
He's the most forgettable.
He just wants to be on his computer anyways.
You can deal with that.
I could deal with that. Round 4, ladies. And by the way, up until about 2 minutes before we started recording, I had forgotten that I didn't have a third woman for this category, and only because I realized there's no female characters in this show. So
I can only think of 2, so...
Yeah, well, that was a problem, but don't worry. The third one I knocked out of the park. So here we go. Valerie Stahl, Sandra Maldonado, or Anna. And who is Anna? That's his girlfriend for episode 1.
Oh.
Who we know nothing about and have learned nothing since then.
I thought it might be the medium psychic, petite psychic on a good day.
Oh, I forgot about her. Originally, I had chosen the mom who really was worried that her son who's died had friends.
What about the mom who was worried that her daughter who had died didn't have friends?
There was a lot of mothers that were interrogated.
Popular on this show.
Yeah. So what do you think?
All right. I'm going to share a Bitcoin account with Captain Maldonado. I'm going to look lovingly at Anna, Kenix's original girlfriend, because, I don't know, she seems spicy too. She's all in that terrorist group. And then we'll send Stahl over the wall. No fault of her own. She's just a little dull for me. I'd rather spend my time with Maldonado.
I think I would switch Anna and Stahl there. I thought you have to send Anna over the wall. All we know about her is she's trouble. Go over there where there's no power.
I'm into trouble, Jordan.
Oh, you're into trouble. Oh, I forgot. Last round, guest stars. DiCarlo. Do you remember DiCarlo?
No.
He was a little guy inside the body. He Men in Black. Body.
Yes.
Dr. Nigel Vaughn. He's Almost Human's Dr. Noonien Sung.
Oh, right, John Larroquette.
And finally, Captain Alexio Barros, who was the bishop in secret.
He's the vice officer who showed up to be the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
I know those are not great options, but blame Almost Human.
No.
Me.
This is easy. I think it's share Bitcoin account with John Larroquette, whatever his character's name was.
Nigel Vaughn.
I'm going to look lovingly at DeMarco, because he's pretty fun. I have a good time with him, I think.
DiCarlo.
I'm sorry that I said the name wrong. And then I'm sending the bishop over the wall, because fuck that guy.
I agree with you on this one. I like that we finished on the same note. Because I'll tell you one thing. You do not want him to have any access to your Bitcoin account. You can't trust him at all.
You know, he's going to sell you some algae-based drugs.
Probably.
Great, Jordan. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
No problem.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 13. Straw Man. Detective Kenix and Dorian investigate a string of murders by a copycat of a serial killer, whom Kenix's father put in jail. As the investigation unfolds, biotechnology from the future sheds light on crimes from the past. Meanwhile, Dorian receives his performance evaluation since being reactivated. That was courtesy of Sohaib.
Sohaib?
Sohaib.
Oh, Sohaib. I thought you said Soyhaib. Like, Habe is a thing, and he's the soy equivalent.
Just the tasteless version of Habe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyways, well, thanks there, Sohaib. That's, I guess, pretty accurate. Have you noticed that a lot of the B-plots, and maybe on the second half of the season, are Dorian B-plots that feel like they need to have him doing something that doesn't necessarily progress his character at all, but at the same time are the most boring B-plots of all time?
I think if you had me think about it, I would start... I think you're right. It definitely seems to be more Dorian B-plot heavy.
Like, I'm just thinking the last couple of episodes. So this one, he's getting an evaluation. Their last episode, he had some memories. Another one, he wanted to live in an apartment. In another one, he was having an emotional problems. It's just like, these are the worst plot lines for this character. But it's like they need to have to do something.
You didn't want to know if he got his own apartment.
Unless that was like a funny episode or something, like in a special episode of Almost Human, they go apartment hunting.
That would have been good, actually.
That would have been better. But anyways, I'm not sure what the strategy is behind that.
I guess you're right. They've been real low stakes and like fairly removed from the plots of the episodes.
Well, you're right, because you could take all of these out with, and it wouldn't affect the show at all, except it would make it a speedier episode.
Well, yeah, it'd only be 40 minutes instead of 45.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, let's get into it then, shall we? So, the crime of the week this week And it starts off at a homeless shelter, and a 16-year-old girl is getting hassled by some dirtbags as she waits for her turn at the automated supplementary dispenser.
I like this thing.
Yeah, this homeless shelter had a lot of fun, weird stuff in it. Like, they're talking about how all the pods are full at the homeless shelter.
So basically, the machine you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, you put your finger in, is that what it is? And it like pricks your blood?
Yes.
And tests your blood and basically finds out the type of nutrients and, maybe protein or calories or whatever you might need, and then dispenses it in like it gives you like a little pill that will have everything you need.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Which is pretty handy.
Yeah, it is pretty handy. It's a great idea. Imagine not having to eat it.
It was weird that that's such a convenient, clearly useful invention that should help a lot of people, but everyone still looks really gross and dirty, and also the place looks really dirty. So did they just spend their money just on those machines and they didn't they didn't mop the floor?
It doesn't seem like there are any staff whatsoever at the shelter.
Yeah, it's probably because they were like, guys, either we can hire 3 nurses or we can have this vending machine that gives you pills. And they're like, vending machine. And so then that's all they have.
It is true. This is the most destitute we've seen in Almost Human. And this is in the city proper. I'm like, there are a lot of like down and out people.
Yeah, at first I thought this was going to be our first shot of what it was like beyond the wall.
Me too, but it's in the city.
I do have a question for you though, Luke. If you were to use that machine, what do you think the machine would say about your dietary needs?
Oh, I need a lot more iron.
Is that what it is? Iron?
I can't stop bleeding. It won't clot.
Oh, I thought it would just like a little thing, like a fortune cookie would come out and you'd open it and say, please no more pizza, Luke.
I'm not going to listen to that. I'd put a little comma in there and it'd say, please, no, more pizza.
Oh, nicely done.
I think I stole that joke from that Death of Stalin movie.
Did you?
I think that's a good joke from that movie.
Yeah, that is a good movie too. But that's not why you called.
It's not why you called. Your new catchphrase.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, this 16-year-old girl ends up like being saved from these hassling dirtbags by this gentleman in a wheelchair.
Wouldn't it have been great if he was played by Jimmy Stewart?
Jimmy Stewart?
Yeah, I knew you'd like that.
Like from A Wonderful Life, he's just real old now.
Yeah. No, but he's like he's played by like a 40-something Jimmy Stewart.
He's like a CGI Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah. He's going back. His face has been CGI'd, so he looks a little younger.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't object, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, so not non-Jimmy Stewart seems like a real diamond in the rough, you know?
Yeah, he tells her about a shelter on Abbott, and he can take her there. They've got beds and food, and they kind of have a conversation about, how the girl got to this still nameless city this late in the show. And she talks about running away from New Pittsburgh.
Oh, I missed that. New Pittsburgh. Everything's new.
That's my new favorite city, by the way, New Pittsburgh.
Because if there's one city you'd want to redo, it would be Pittsburgh.
Why not? There's some good slang for living on the streets in Almost Human. They call it scraping it.
Yeah, scraping it.
I think the guy in the wheelchair is just like, I'm just out here scraping it.
Who says that? The guy with the glasses later on? Those like cool sunglasses?
No. The wheelchair guy.
Oh, he says it. Oh.
Yeah, he says it. He's just talking about his tough life. And at any rate, we get to the crime part when he kind of scratches her with his ring, but like what he's doing is he's sedating her.
Yeah, he's got like his ring has like a spike in it that I'm assuming is like a thorn with poison on it.
Yeah, probably a little needle or something. And she starts to pass out, and he gets out of his wheelchair.
He goes all Jamie Gum on her in the van. He puts her in. Remember in Silence of the Lambs?
Is that the character?
His trick was to pretend he needed help with a couch.
Right. But yeah, he knocks her out, gets her in his van, he drives off, and now we got a crime of the week. Who's this guy just stealing girls from homeless shelters?
That's okay, I guess, in terms of the crime of the week.
It's fine. It's a kickoff to something.
Mm-hmm.
This busts us back to the police precinct, and Dorian's getting his yearly android audit.
Yeah, that was weird, but sure, why not?
I guess they do it for the MXs too. Like, staff come in, they interview them, and just kind of check out, see how they're doing, I guess.
But here's the thing. They're androids. Couldn't they just read their files, check their stats or whatever they're getting information? They actually have to go and interview each of these people? They're robots.
I wonder if they do that with the MXs, but they can't do it with the DRNs because they've got that synthetic soul.
Maybe. This is a real time waste for everyone then.
Yeah, these people have never done it before. They're really winging it here. Usually they're just staring at data printouts and they're like asking questions. I wrote down three, like they kind of interview three people, Maldonado, Rudy, and Kennex. And I kind of wrote down one little piece of information about each of their interviews that stood out to me. While they're interviewing Maldonado, she starts talking about how, I paired Dorian with Kennex because I knew they'd be good together. For reasons I won't say.
That's right. Why did she say that?
It seemed, I'm just like, imagine going to a meeting. They're like, so why did you choose to do this, unorthodox method? She's like, I thought it would be good, but I'd rather not say why.
They wanted to set it up as possibly a reveal for something later on. But as we know, this is the last episode. So it just comes across as a weird thing of she's just like, I know I'm crazy, but c'est la vie.
It does feel like this could be a reveal later. Let's not throw it away yet, but I don't know what that reveal is going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I know what you're going to say about Rudy.
Rudy, I know we've talked about how they've had problems with him. I actually thought this time it was kind of sweetly awkward, his interview. Mm-hmm. He's just kind of talking about how much he trusts Dorian. And like he starts talking about like, if I had a baby, I would leave it around Dorian. I'd give it to Dorian to raise. He'd be a better father than me. He's like, I'd let Dorian have my baby.
Yeah, it wasn't, in terms of the beating up on Rudy, it was the most innocuous of them.
It was cute. It was like he was stumbling over his words and it just kept getting worse and worse. It felt like the best version of this character.
Right.
I think, anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
And then Kennex was my favorite, though. They just do a cutaway to Kennex sitting at this interview table looking at them, and he's just like, he flipped the van once. Pretty cool.
He flipped the van. Didn't know he could do that. Which I thought was a pretty funny, actually, a little, I think, comment, one, on just mentioning a previous episode, and two, they've never mentioned he had those abilities before or since.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was like, you're right. I forgot about that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, and here's a question for you. They called the test the Luger test. But that's not the test that Dorian is taking right now, right? That's the test that all the models originally failed?
Yeah, that was what they used to give them when they were in service to see if they were having trouble.
Right.
They haven't. I thought they were going to break it out this episode, but they didn't.
That's what I thought. So conceivably, if he had done bad in these interviews or people's comments to be bad, they would maybe give him the Luger test?
I don't know. It was unclear. It was weird they brought it up and then didn't do it.
Right. It's like we were beside that fireworks factory. Yeah, there's a lot of fireworks going in over there. Don't go in though. Don't take a look at it.
just keep your eyes over here. They schedule kind of a follow-up interview, which they come back to kind of at the end of the show, sort of bookend them. And Dorian, throughout the episode, is quite nervous about them coming back. We'll get into the follow-up, I guess, at the end. But it's kind of funny because as they're driving around on this like case, trying to do stuff, him and Kennex are talking about these interviews he's been doing. And Kennex is kind of teasing him. But they also sort of, in this teasing, recap kind of the season.
That's true.
Because he's just like teasing him. He's just like, he's like, Dorian, you know what I told in the interview? I told him about the time you broke that DRN out of the hospital. You remember that? And then, oh yeah, you remember that time you scanned my balls?
Yeah. It did definitely feel in a lot of ways that this was the, if not series finale, the season finale.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. For a show that hasn't had a lot of continuity, they took a few breaks of the show to like remind us of like the good times from past episodes, I guess.
Yeah.
And then at some point, too, he's talking to Rudy about it, and Rudy tells him he should just act like an MX unit because that's what they like. And it'll lead to, I guess, scene played for comedy where he just does an MX voice.
But the comedy lasts for maybe 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, well, it doesn't work, so they give up on it real quick.
The show is this weird thing that they set up like a scene, and then you see the scene, and it's like such a disappointment. It seems like everyone knows. They're just like, all right, let's just move on. It's like, well, I just don't put it in the show. But anyways... It's one of those weird examples.
We got to shoot it.
Yeah.
Anyway, they get a call that this girl's body's been found out by the wall when a drone was kind of doing its routine wall scans. Mm-hmm. So they head out there and they find her body, and she's been cut open and stuffed with straw.
And this made me laugh because they said it's the same kind of attack and murder that a previous killer had done years and years ago, and they nicknamed him Straw Man because he filled his victims with straw. And for some reason, that was the funniest thing ever. And I just laughed and laughed. I guess just because Scarecrow seems like the more obvious name, but obviously that's a Batman villain. But all I could think was Straw Man is that his major villain power was that he was just going to misrepresent his opponent's position in a debate.
I mean, You make an excellent point, and something I've started noticing with these episodes. The villains of the week have gotten more and more Batman-esque.
Yeah, they're getting a little more cartoony.
And I kind of wish that if they were going to go this way, just go full Batman and don't kill them at the end of every episode. Let's just like have them constantly having like a rotating door of like insane villains they're constantly having to rematch up against.
Here comes the clown.
I would have liked that. It would have been very funny to me if just like the Simon Says comes back and they have to like deal with more bombs on X, or he like puts bombs somewhere else, or the Beauty Killer's back. Like these are all like such outlandish villains. If you're gonna go that way, I would have loved if they leaned into it, like became 60s Batman. For
the Beauty Killer though, I thought we agreed on Vain Villain.
Oh right, we're changing that name. We're retconning.
Anyways, what we find out here, jumping back to the episode, is that the original Straw Man was a murderer. I don't know if they said how many years ago. I'm going to assume, let's say 30 years previous. Did you catch? Did they say how long ago it would have been?
No, I think it was 10.
So it's not even that long ago. So 10 years ago, they think it's a different person because the person who was the original Straw Man was caught by who, Luke?
Caught by Kennicks's own daddy, one Edward Kennicks,
who's also a cop. And you're right. You mentioned in a previous episode that I think they've mentioned it a few times about his dad being a cop. He's sort of in passing.
Yeah, and they kind of implied that he was maybe a crooked cop or something. That's been the implication. In this episode, they kind of talk about how he was under investigation at the time he died for selling police seized robo-technologies.
Yeah.
And Kennicks never really believed he was crooked because he was such a good guy. But like this is basically his chance to like reconnect with his dad and prove his dad's innocence this episode.
I was really hoping that the copycat killer was going to be John's dad.
No, it's not.
It was the dumbest thing it could be, and so I was really hoping that's what it would be. And he'd be like, "You've been alive the whole time?" And he's like, "Yes, and I planned it on the anniversary of my death," that sort of thing.
If only, I'm telling you, if they had only leaned into the like insane villain element.
It's true.
Anyway, since they figure this is a copycat crime, they decide they're going to go see the original Straw Man who's in the cubes, and we get to go see the cubes.
Yeah, it's the future prison. We finally get to see it.
It's a letdown.
In my memory of it, it wasn't even cube-shaped.
No, it seems to be a big cylinder.
Maybe it's ironically named the cube because they're desperate for like right angles.
Right. Everyone has no angles, and they're like, "Oh, I wish."
It's very hard to put furniture in all the rooms.
The original killer is a gentleman named Michael Costa. He's a paranoid schizophrenic who was caught for the murders originally, but he claims his innocence now. That he's got some like proper medical help and is on medication. And he even says that Kennicks's dad dropped by before he died to say that he'd figured out that it was a frame up and this guy really is innocent.
So the idea being that the real killer was never caught.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit of an idea is like now he's got to really like get in and not just like save this man but save his dad. It's a real redemption story here.
Usually in this kind of plot, when you see it in TV or books or movies or what have you, they sort of leave the impression that maybe the person in jail actually is the bad guy and they're sort of manipulating people. But I never got the sense. I got the sense right off the bat, like, oh yeah, he was innocent and he was put in jail. Do you know what I mean?
That's not really Almost Human style. Like, it's a pretty surface show in some ways. Like, they don't leave you wondering a lot. I think they've tried to drive home what you're supposed to believe pretty quickly.
I think you get conditioned by seeing the same things over and over. And in one way, I guess that's refreshing that they didn't do that. But in another way, it seemed like they kind of missed a beat of like missing some tension that could have been there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. And it just, at this point, this late in the game with Almost Human, it does, I do feel like I'm like, that would have been off brand for this show.
I actually quite enjoyed this episode. Now, it's not a great episode to TV, and a lot of Almost Human is not great, but at its best, it's kind of fun, fluffy science fiction. And I think when they do that, it can be executed pretty well. And this episode's it's kind of a dumb fun episode.
Yeah. Basically, after this, they go back to the precinct. Captain Maldonado talks to Internal Affairs and gets Daddy Kennicks's files unsealed so that Kennicks can go through all his old files on the Straw Man. And we get a scene where he's like kind of watching an old photo of his dad or an old video of his dad doing the case, and he finds that his dad has circled all the victims' feet and he doesn't know why. But here's something for you, Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw his dad, did you have any thoughts?
The thought I had is not going to be the thought you had. My thought was, because the dad, they sort of are setting up his dad like he was Serpico, like he was a cop that, was the only good cop on the force sort of thing. So I was really hoping it would be Al Pacino playing an old version of Serpico, and it'd be somehow connected to that world. That's what I thought.
Oh, all I thought was that they got an off-brand Sean Connery to do the job.
So there you go. Different thoughts. Either way, neither of us were happy.
As soon as I saw him, like, Jordan's going to want to present a recast of this immediately.
Yes, well, I did recast.
But yeah, he's got a clue. His dad circled all the victims' feet. Rudy's doing an autopsy on the most recent victim, and when he gets there, Rudy starts telling him, "Oh, there's something weird about the corpse. Like, there's no dirt under the fingernails, and no matter how much you cleaned a body, like, there should be dirt." So Rudy kind of posits a theory that this is actually a replica of the victim.
The way they get to it, though, is John is looking through his dad's files, and for some reason, his dad has circled the feet of all these people. Now, he doesn't leave any notes or anything. The dad leaves these notes as vague as possible. It's just, he just circles feet, and John's like, wait a minute, feet are connected, and then somehow they realize what, Luke?
Well, when they're looking at the body, he knows to look at feet. Rudy's implied it might be a replica. They go look at the feet, and the victim is flat-footed.
And it's flat-footed because what they find, or what they explain, is that these aren't the actual victims. They're essentially 3D printed versions of people.
Yeah, they're from a bioprinter.
But this is an early model. I think they said it was 5 years old. And so this model had one flaw in it, which is because it makes people from the feet up. So it's, like a 3D printer, it would sort of build as it goes. The weight of the person presses on the feet, I guess, before it's made solid. And so it makes flat feet. Now, I'll give it to Almost Human because this is right up their brand, but it's such a silly thing that's the flaw. But I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll buy it.
Oh, it's funny. I took it to mean that, like, it couldn't shoot down, so, like, everything you build is just flat on the bottom. Like, it can't do a curve.
No, I think it's the weight of the body pressing. It's not that they have, like, a flat foot like a toy.
Well, that probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they basically pieced together that this isn't the real victim. And that's why she's empty inside. It's not because the killer took out their organs and stuffed them with straw. It's just like the bioprinter can't do organs.
He's doing stuff with the bodies, and to throw police off the trail, he's leaving these stuffed bodies to get them off his scent.
They think the person's dead, so they stop looking into it. Another one of these straw bodies turns up, and they go out there, and it's clearly a replica too. But they notice this time that it's got a little pinprick on its finger. For when they replicated this person too, they had the supplementary dispenser. Hey, we don't know those pills weren't suppositories. They never said.
They never said how you had to take them.
And basically, they kind of know, okay, this guy is like getting his victims from homeless shelters. And Captain Maldonado comes up with a plan. Basically, she's going to send cops to all but 2 of the homeless shelters. So when this guy shows up, he'll get freaked out. And eventually, he's going to have to end up on one of the shelters that doesn't have cops roaming around.
Which I guess is a strategy that works, I suppose.
I mean, it gets us there. That's all that matters.
It gets us there, that's true.
And this is actually where Detective Paul... It's very funny, because he was gone the last 2 episodes on vacation. And in this episode, Detective Paul's back, and he comes back, he's just like, I'm back from vacation, everybody. Did you miss me? And I was just like... You could have said nothing and I wouldn't have noticed.
I don't know what the reason he wasn't in it. I'm assuming it was a scheduling thing, or the actor wasn't available, so they didn't have him in the show. But what's funny is that he's not that integral to any of these episodes. At most, he's in one scene. So not having him in an episode was not noticeable at all, but they drew the viewer's attention to it hard in the episode he's not there, and then reminded them again he's back. As if like people were like, where's Paul? Every scene, where's Paul? Shouldn't he be in the office being made fun of?
You guys, I tuned in for Paul. He's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Paul is dressed up as if he's homeless, and he's at the homeless shelter. Again, yeah, that's right. He didn't have any little cockroaches with him this time, though. And he's talking to a guy who has, like, hilarious sunglasses, which you knew were going to be a plot point, because they're so obviously a plot point.
They're kind of cool. They're like sunglasses, but they have like lights around the frame, so they're big lit up sunglasses. And he's this street kid, and he kind of tells Paul that they're night vision sunglasses.
Wasn't it actually a nice little scene with Detective Paul, because he gives the guy money? And there's a longer discussion, Luke. But I realized Detective Paul this whole time has actually been the nice person, and all the main characters we're following in the show are jerk bullies.
He's a sweetheart. Like, yeah, this kid can't get into the shelter, so he gives him some Bitcoin. Like, they tap Bitcoin holders. They have little, like, flash drives they tap together and gives him some Bitcoin. And him and the kid are, like, kind of joshing each other, talking about, like, each other's moms. Like, it's this kind of weird, like, street tough talk. And essentially, yeah, it becomes the plot point because after Paul's, on the lookout for the straw man, and he's kind of like undercover watching for him at the shelter. And he looks down and he sees this kid's glasses again next to a garbage can. And when he looks up, he sees a van tearing away and he's just like calls it in and they send a drone after the van. The drone picks up the van as he kind of gets to his hideout and it scans the guy's face. And they, thanks to facial recognition, they immediately know he's a guy named Glenn Dunbar, this illegal tech trader. And he runs off, leaving his victim behind into his, what was up with his lab? It's basically an open air lab underneath a dock.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was underneath like a big wharf dock, like just a huge wooden dock. And it was like, there were no walls. It was like all open air.
Maybe it was just like a mobile unit.
It looked like a real supervillain, like...
Well, I mean, maybe it all just folds down into a briefcase when you pack it real tight.
Oh, maybe that's the case. Because I guess it was just a giant 3D bioprinter.
Didn't you feel bad though that he wasn't actually in a wheelchair? I've never seen a serial killer in a wheelchair. That'd been something different.
I mean, you're right. I've never seen that.
Come on, some equality here,
This is a weird thing you were disappointed about.
Serial killer equality? That's always been a cause I've fought for.
Why aren't people with disabilities given the chance to murder people en masse?
Exactly.
Kennex and Dorian and the MXs, they do their classic episode-ending raid of his facility. We're at the end of an episode. We're the end when a raid happens. They find the two victims. They're still alive. They're kind of like in these boxes, but they've been like covered in like, they say biotech. They've got like wires coming out of them and like all kinds of goop, like all kinds of weird like circuit boards plugged into their chest. One of the MX units finds the body of this Dunbar character, and they're like, "Oh, he's dead already for some reason." And of course, we know.
How sure were you that it was going to have a bomb in it?
Oh, you know what? I didn't think about it, but you're right.
Really?
Of course, it would have a bomb in it.
Of course, it was. I saw it. And I was like, my note was, I bet that body has a bomb in it. That was it.
Yep. He 3D printed a body and put a bomb in it. He was on top of it.
But we're coming to a scene that I was kind of excited about. And Luke, you can set this up. But did you notice the electric knife?
No. Well, because him and Kennex get in a fist fight. The real alive Dunbar.
And John pulls out an electric knife.
Oh my God!
It's got like electricity in it, and he jams it into the guy.
Oh, you know what? I do remember this. You're right. He like stabs him right in the chest, and it like, because this guy is now, we come to learn, a cyborg.
Yeah. They actually said he's been made into a cyborg.
Yes. Apparently he's got some degenerative disease, and that's like 10 years ago when he did all the original killings. He like kidnaps people to test biotech designs to help prolong his life, and now 10 years later those are failing, so he's just doing it again.
Yeah, that was their way around why would he have stopped killing people for 10 years. So basically it wasn't like a sick compulsion. He actually just was a killer. He was a pragmatic killer.
Yeah, he needed it to stay alive.
Yeah.
Although I have to ask, because at some point he asks one of these 16-year-old girl victims like their height, and I thought that it was going to lead, like I thought maybe he was going to make a Frankenstein or something, but I was just like, he was taller than them, and he only kidnapped like teenage girls. Like, how does that help him design things for his own body?
It's a red herring that makes no sense, because the implication you think is, oh, he's going to
make a Frankenstein.
Yeah, make a skin out of the clothing, or clothing out of their skin or something like that. But no, it's just like, I don't know, he has a preference for tiny organs or something.
Oh, imagine if he made a skin out of their clothing. He just stitched all their clothing together and then took off his own skin and like just put the clothing on.
Now that's a great villain. He calls himself the Clothes Horse. Pretty good?
That was a whiff.
Oh, sorry.
The Clothes Horse. Wouldn't he have to like also be a horse?
Yeah, he's also a horse. I forgot about that. He also has a horse's head.
Oh, great. Perfect. You fixed it.
Yeah, fixed it. Done. All right, it's lunch.
Anyway, Kennex kills him finally. He just like, the stabbing doesn't work, so he just shoots him repeatedly and then he's dead. The cyborg is dead.
By the way, this is like the anticlimactic ending we've seen at least in a few episodes where John just ends up shooting someone a bunch of times. You go, that's the end. And you're like, oh, he just shot him? You're like, yep, that's it.
when they wrap up the plot so quickly, they're just like, oh, all this gear that Dunbar has is like 3D printer and all his biotech stuff. It's all still marked from the evidence from the police department 10 years ago. So we figured out that some guy who worked in evidence like gave him all this stuff to sell. That's how he was running his criminal empire. And then your dad found out, so they killed him. And then the guy who worked in evidence died 3 weeks later, so he's dead too. So don't worry about that guy. He also was killed by the straw man, I guess.
It was one of the neatest endings I've ever seen in a TV show.
They really were like, and now this is all tidied up. There's no more police corruption. There's no one else involved.
Yeah, they might as well have just had a person with a notepad who was just reading, like, and that one, check. That one, check. All right, well, that's it.
The good news, your dad's name is cleared.
And then also, apparently in the future, the justice system moves very, very fast because literally the day that they solve the case, they kill the bad guy, they go, Costa's being released right now. I'm like, right now? It's been like 10 minutes.
Yes, the falsely accused paranoid schizophrenic is like immediately released.
I mean, good for him, but like, wow, they've really fixed that backlog.
Well, and they even talk about how now that he's being released, they're going to make sure that he gets all his proper medical care, so we don't have to worry about his mental state as well.
Yeah, don't worry about him either.
It's like when those organs, that organ black market ring at the end of the episode, they're like, and everyone who had those bad organs, the other organ company is giving them all new organs. Don't worry about anything, everybody.
Yeah, I do like the idea that the writers or the showrunner, whoever it might be, is very concerned that people are going to finish watching the show and be worried about these very low stakes, unimportant, pretty forgettable threads that they've left. It's like, no one cares.
You needed to know that hacker kid had friends. Like, if the episode ended and you didn't know he had all those friends.
I know, it's just these weird things. It's like, who cares? Who cares? Anyway.
They love to wrap something up completely.
Anyway.
The episode kind of ends. Dorian goes back for the kind of follow-up to his interview, his service interview. And the guy basically tells him his term's getting extended, his review is great, and he tells him that, like, Kennick in particular gave him a really glowing appraisal. And so the series kind of ends on this scene.
So they kind of set up the stakes of, oh no, the whoever the people are that are investigating or doing these end of year reviews of Dorian, they want to have a face-to-face meeting with him. And so he's all nervous and blah, blah, blah. He gets there and the guy's like, just want to tell you you're awesome. And I thought, why did they have to meet face-to-face for that? What a big waste of time. And also, what a waste of a scene. They could have literally just had him be like, in a car and he's like, oh, I just received an email. Great, I got extended. That would have made just as much sense, and they don't even have to move.
I guess they needed someone to tell him directly that Dorian gave him such a glowing appraisal to, like, set up the next scene? ?
That's what it is. You needed someone to say, because John's not going to be able to say loving things to his partner, but you get this actually quite nice scene where they're sitting at the beginning and sort of bookending. John at the beginning of this show in episode 1 sitting by himself eating noodles. Now he has Dorian there, and
it's really nice.
It is actually a nice scene, especially
they go back to little Blade Runner town, and it's the same kind of rainy noodle spot that looks exactly like the Blade Runner movie, and yeah, Dorian shows up to, like, kind of thank his partner for standing up for him.
And for once for this show, they don't sort of pull their punches. Like, this show's very terrified of anyone saying something nice without someone else saying something sarcastic or something like that. But this scene, for the most part, pretty much doesn't do that. And he says to John, thank you very much. John basically begrudgingly admits that he does like him as a partner, and Dorian gives John a present to say thank you, which is a new updated leg.
That was fun because he hands him this, like, gift-wrapped leg, and John's like, I wonder what it is, and Dorian's like, it's a leg.
Yeah, and that worked. It's funny. That kind of humor works on this show much better than whatever they usually try to do.
It was the best of their partnership, and, like, for the last moment of this show where they kind of have a nice moment, and at the end of it, they kind of get called off to a robbery, so they're going off to continue their partnership. But I thought this was a strangely appropriate wrap-up to this show.
Yeah, I thought it worked.
It wasn't a cliffhanger. It wasn't an escalation of anything. It was just kind of a reaffirmation that these two characters are actually a good partnership, and these two actors are good together. And this is, like, what the best parts of the show, parts of the show that worked were these, like, moments with them. And, like, it kind of is just, like, a really quiet, anticlimactic ending, but, like, somehow more meaningful that way, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's very funny because it was just like a lot of shows, especially lately, you'd want to like raise the stakes or set up some sort of arc for next season. And this was just like so anti that. It just was like, isn't this nice? This is an ending.
Did they know they were going to get canceled before this episode aired?
I don't think they did. You know what? Honestly, I didn't find too much writing. Kind of after the stuff about it starting, there wasn't a lot more writing about the show. I think they might have shot it all because there probably would have been a lot of post on these things. And then as the show went on, they probably got a better and better sense. Maybe it wasn't going to come back. But I don't feel like they knew it was necessarily a full ending. I maybe I'm wrong though. I might have missed an article out there somewhere.
Either way, I think it's a this is going to sound mean, but it's almost a better ending than this show deserved. Not because I think the show's a terrible show, but despite itself, it's a show that really shoots itself in the foot a lot, and I think this was a nice ending that I was a little surprised at.
Let's give it a rating before we kind of wrap up our talk about this show. This episode, I mean.
I like this episode. I think it did. You've mentioned it before that this was one of the, I think, the better episodes in terms of what this show can be. Now, is it a great episode of television? Nah, it's kind of got some silly, stupid moments, and there's some wasted time of B-plots and stuff, but for an Almost Human episode, it was kind of light and breezy and a fun episode, and I wish there was more episodes like this and less like, I don't know, some of the more boring ones. So I give this one a 7.5.
7.5. I have to give it another 7, and I think I've done that for definitely the last two, and maybe even the two before that I gave them 7s. It's not... I feel like a 7 for this show is basically a 10 for this show. Like a 7 on my scale is basically a 10 for this show. Like lots of problems. It's very surface level, but I still had a good time. It went by, and like there were moments that really worked, and I think some of the character stuff worked better than ever in this episode. It was almost like having them recap stuff and talk about things. I was like, oh yeah, there are stuff that works here. So I'm gonna go with a 7. Do you want to know what the overall series average is?
Yeah, what is the overall? Let's blow the dust off the old machine and start punching in some numbers.
Okay, this Continuum Drag computer here. Let me get it booted up here, and we'll punch in our final scores. So our series average, Jordan, for Almost Human?
Yeah.
6.48.
Yeah, 6.48. Do you know how that compares to the other shows?
I would say the closest comparison might be Space Above and Beyond, and it's pretty close. Space Above and Beyond was 6.57.
Right. It's pretty close.
So it's pretty close.
Space Above and Beyond was more up and down. They had some episodes that were way better than this, and they also had some episodes where...
Much worse.
Much, much worse. Just nothing went right. So that's what, you end up with that average.
What do you think? Recommend this show to people? Would you recommend this to someone?
When we started the show and we were both reading about it and talking about it, I'm sure you came across it a lot as well. I saw over and over and over, because this still has a pretty strong fan base and a pretty vocal fan base, and everyone was ragging so hard on Fox, the network, for airing this out of order, and if it had aired the proper way, it would have been a hit, and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, we've now watched it in the proper order. I don't think it really mattered at all.
No, I don't think it made much difference.
Maybe minor difference because of some of the sort of storylines that are running through the whole season, the serialized elements, but it doesn't affect the show.
No, I don't think it was enough to make any major difference at all. It's so standalone.
Would I recommend the show? I think it depends on the person. If you like kind of this kind of actiony show, it's more for someone who likes like cop partner shows than someone who likes a sci-fi show.
I think I'd recommend it. I feel like it's not something you need to pay attention to. Like if this was the kind of thing you were gonna put in the background while you did some work, or you were folding some laundry, or it's the end of the day and you just need to like veg out and not think too hard, you could probably do worse than this show.
That's true.
It doesn't hold up to a lot of maybe detailed thinking about, which maybe some of the better sci-fi does. Like Tech War is not a great show, but its tech is so insane that technology, there was a lot to talk about because it was so weird, but it wasn't a great show. And, this has its own problems, but they should have pushed the crazy element a little bit further, I think, or maybe not been so surface level with its stories. But as far as like an inoffensive science fiction show to have in the background. There's definitely worse things you could watch.
Perhaps maybe some of our criticisms about what you're saying. Really, the overall criticism is nothing ever gets beyond the surface. However, I think maybe the show never wanted it to. So it may be a bit of a unfair criticism because it's criticizing the show for the show that it just never wanted to be. Us discussing the show for 13 hours is more of a dissection than the show ever wanted.
I mean, I think our ratings sort of evened out near the end where they stayed relatively at the same place. They weren't going to go any higher, but they weren't really going lower because there were still some hiccups, but it kind of fell in its rhythm, and it was just like, here's a very straightforward plot with very straightforward, there's no twists, there's no turns, you're going to see it all coming, and it's going to be very comfortable for you to watch. But there'll be a nude MX with no genitals, or there'll be cool pops here and there. Like every episode had a cool sci-fi pop, and then some good character work from all the actors. But just, it went down smooth, but you just didn't think about it too hard.
We had talked earlier about how this show was desperate to tie up loose threads. However, I wrote down a bunch of season threads that we're never going to have answered, and I don't know if you had more, but let me read you the list of ones that I wrote down. So here's things that they mentioned and we'll just never have answered. The wall and all its implications. What's on the other side? What is this city? What does it mean? How does the wall work? We're never going to know. Second thing, Dr. Nigel Vaugh, who was obviously the one who created the DRN models. He just escaped in the idea that it's going to be a big thing that's going to come back.
Well, he stole the robot army.
Yeah, exactly. To go build a robot army. That's never going to come back. They set up Dorian's memories as being something important for him and for the show. Never going to know about that. The original sort of secret mystery of the show, Jake's girlfriend. How was that? John's girlfriend, and what happened to her.
Remember when they found Russian nesting doll with a mic in it and someone's been listening to her the whole time?
Yeah, and then they just went, forget about that. Anyway, so that's another one. And then the last one I had, and the least interesting, is the love story completion. And I only mention it because they had to hammer it home with every episode that these two characters of Detective Stahl and Kennex were meant to fall in love. And they never finished that storyline either.
How pleasant was it that they didn't get into that at all in the final episode?
Oh, I loved it. I think it's the only episode that they didn't do it.
There was no loving stares. There was no little moments. And it was great because it's just so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Jordan, I do have some good news for you about those cliffhangers.
What's that?
While I was doing research on the show, I did find someone, much like Space Above and Beyond, has started a website where they've promised to write the second season of Almost Human themselves. They've promised to reveal Beyond the Wall. They've promised to build more of a relationship between Paul and Kennex. The last update on it was back in January, saying, I need a break, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to start writing these soon. And they have photos of their episode outlines.
That seems like, how would you say, a colossal waste of time?
Well, they're taking a break because something's come up in their lives, they said, but they may come back to it. I mean, it might be like the Space and Beyond second series, which I found online, where someone was writing a second season, where I think they got through the first episode of the second season and then never went back to it. But who knows, Jordan? Maybe we'll come back and we'll have to read the second season online.
And we'll read the second season and then discuss them as if they're actual episodes. I'm like, these are really terribly written.
No worse than the show.
Can you get worse than Scarecrow as the bad guy? Not Scarecrow. What do they call him?
Strawman.
Strawman.
I'll give you a little preview. Is that they had a few lines of dialogue for an episode where Kennex was talking to Paul. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, they're very on brand for the show because the conversation was Kennex tells Paul that the MX units have no genitals and then tells him that Dorian does. Mm-hmm. And then Paul's just like, is that why you're walking so funny?
Oh yeah, well you know what? That does feel like the show. So he's nailed the tone.
He's really nailing the tone. I read that and I'm just like, that's terrible, but that is perfectly in line with this show.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's a good note I think to finish.
Okay, Jordan. So next week, now that we're done, we're gonna come back with a TV movie, a little movie called Baffled, starring Leonard Nimoy.
It's not Baffled. It's Baffled! Exclamation mark.
Yes, exclamation mark's very important. I'm looking forward to that one. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we're going to come back and do The Dune miniseries.
Yeah, I think it's the early 2000s.
Yeah, I think maybe 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm interested to get into this. I've seen the movie. I read the book. I can't wait to see what this miniseries is like.
I hope just insane.
A little look at things to come, listener.
Mm-hmm.
But until next time, if you have anything else to say about Almost Human, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at continuumdrag, where we'll have some final shots of this show as it leaves our lives. And I guess that's it, Jordan. This is the end of Almost Human.
Yeah, it feels like it should be.
It's been a real mild ride.
It has been. It has been. It's like a smooth ride in a wheelchair to go find someone to murder and stuff them with straw.
Your dream serial killer.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, Jordan. I'll see you next week.
I'll see you with baffled! Continuum
Drag is recorded at Astrolab Studios in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Ruxfiedler. Produced by Jordan Delic and Luke Black. Special thanks to Adam Wheatner, Jeff Hanley, and Dwayne Wright.